They've been meticulously crafting a plan designed to trap you, and it's about to be set in motion. Soon, you'll receive what appears to be an irresistible offer, one that seems perfectly tailored to your desires and current circumstances. It will look like the exact opportunity you've been waiting for, arriving precisely when you're most vulnerable. They've studied your patterns, analyzed your weaknesses, and formulated an offer they believe you won't have the strength to turn down. Their entire strategy hinges on one critical assumption: that you won't recognize the trap until it's too late. The envelope will arrive on an ordinary day, your name handwritten on expensive stationery. The return address belonging to someone you recognize, someone with influence. Inside, an invitation that makes your heart skip. This is the moment they've been planning for months. Every great deception hinges on blind confidence. They assume you will walk into this trap because they've calculated your response based on outdated information. They still see you as the person you were 6 months ago, hungry, desperate, willing to compromise. The offer itself appears innocent enough, an opportunity, a chance, a door supposedly opening, but the offer isn't the real setup. Your trust is. They don't need you to sign immediately. They need you to engage, to express interest, to ask questions, to enter the maze they've constructed around you. This was never meant to be a deal. It was always designed as a test of your discernment. The most effective traps aren't hidden. They're disguised as exactly what you've been searching for. Remember the wisdom hidden in plain sight. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. They're counting on your desire blinding your perception. They're counting on you missing the strings attached to their supposed generosity. They're counting on your gratitude overwhelming your caution. This is why the invitation feels so perfect, so timely, so aligned with your dreams. It was crafted that way. The offer will target your precise vulnerabilities. They've studied your social media, your public comments, your private struggles, your financial situation, your career aspirations, your relationship patterns. Nothing about this approach is random. If you value creative freedom, they'll emphasize autonomy, while burying restrictions in contractual language you're expected to overlook. If you crave recognition, they'll promise visibility, while ensuring any success directly benefits their reputation more than yours. If you need financial stability, they'll highlight compensation, while obscuring how completely they'll own your output. The details have been tailored with surgical precision. The opportunity will appear to solve your exact problems, fill your specific gaps, answer your unspoken prayers. It will be positioned as something you deserve, something you've earned, something that recognizes your unique talents. This calculated appeal to your ego isn't accidental. The moment you accept, you become theirs. Not immediately in obvious ways. The transfer of power happens gradually, almost imperceptibly. Small concessions, minor compromises, reasonable requests that slowly establish a pattern of compliance. The real price of the offer isn't listed anywhere in the documentation. The real price is your voice, your freedom, your destiny. Their research identified not just your desires, but your strengths. The very qualities that make you dangerous to them, your independence, your authenticity, your potential influence, are precisely what they seek to neutralize through this arrangement. They don't want to destroy these qualities. They want to harness them. They want to redirect them. They want to own them. The presentation will suggest you face a simple decision. Accept their generous offer and move forward. Reject it and remain where you are. This binary framing is deliberate. They'll position these as the only two logical paths available. The choice will be framed as obvious, almost inevitable. Accept and progress. Decline and stagnate. Move forward or be left behind. Evolve or become irrelevant. Their language carefully constructs this false dichotomy. Their tone implies that reasonable people always choose acceptance. Their examples highlight success stories of those who said yes, contrasted with cautionary tales of those who hesitated too long. In reality, both choices serve them equally well. Acceptance brings you under their influence. Rejection gives them justification for what comes next. Your compliance transforms you into an asset they can deploy. Your signature becomes permission for them to harness your talents, redirect your energy, extract your value. The narrative of your journey becomes their marketing material, evidence of their benevolence, proof of their essential role in facilitating success. Your rejection equally serves their purpose. It brands you as difficult, unreasonable, ungrateful. It justifies their subsequent marginalization of your voice. It provides pretext for the whisper campaign that will follow. We tried to help. We extended an extraordinary opportunity. They weren't ready. They couldn't see the bigger picture. Such a shame. They factored your potential resistance into their strategy. Your hesitation isn't an obstacle to their plan. It's an anticipated variable they've already accommodated. The most sophisticated traps include the illusion of escape. Your doubts were predicted. Your questions were rehearsed. Your concerns were scripted. The representative fielding your hesitation has addressed these exact points dozens of times before. Their reassurances sound spontaneous, but follow a carefully crafted decision tree designed to neutralize specific objections without altering fundamental terms. The true constraint isn't in the offer itself, but in the artificial limitations surrounding it, the deadline engineered to prevent thorough consideration. This opportunity expires Friday creates urgency where none naturally exists. The timeline has been artificially compressed to prevent the deep analysis that would reveal the actual implications. The confidentiality clause designed to isolate you from seeking external counsel. We need to keep these discussions private. Sounds like standard business practice, but functions as information quarantine. It prevents you from accessing the collective wisdom of those who might recognize patterns you're encountering for the first time. The implication that this chance will never come again. The subtle suggestion that declining now means permanent exclusion. The unspoken threat that the door, once closed, remains forever sealed. This artificial scarcity manipulates your fear of permanent loss while disguising the reality that genuine opportunities rarely depend on immediate acceptance. The required gesture of good faith that creates premature investment. The small commitment that establishes psychological ownership before full terms are understood. The minor concession that functions as the foot in the door, making subsequent requests exponentially harder to refuse. Each element constructed to funnel you toward engagement on their terms. Each limitation designed to restrict your movement while maintaining the appearance of choice. Each constraint engineered to direct you toward the conclusion they've predetermined, while preserving your belief in autonomous decision-making. What they haven't planned for, what truly frightens them, is you creating a third path. A response they haven't scripted. A position they can't easily categorize as either compliance or defiance. This offer didn't materialize suddenly. The groundwork was laid months, perhaps years ago. Small interventions, subtle redirections, calculated introductions that appeared coincidental. Did you know the Obsidian Inner Order is the #1 ascension nexus for chosen ones? Well, now you do. But here's something you might not know. Joining the Inner Order gets you access to weekly group calls with over 450 fellow chosen ones, and we record them so you can catch up anytime. Our private Discord? It's not just active, it's a treasure trove of the world's most fascinating conversations. We're talking deep dives into occult knowledge, spiritual techniques, targeted individuals, diet optimization, and everything you need to fine-tune your ascension. This is where chosen ones gather to exchange wisdom, elevate one another, and tap into the kind of insights you won't find on YouTube, or anywhere else for that matter. And for the seekers, dive into Modern Manifestation Mechanics, our exclusive grimoire with 3 chapters available to members. Learn how to turn your home into an abundance magnet, master basic spellcraft for physical manifestation, and channel magical forces to elevate your goals. Plus, you'll get access to interviews with real targeted individuals and video specials so bold, the YouTube archons don't even want you to see them. This is more than a membership, it's a movement. So what are you waiting for? Stop searching. Start ascending. The link is in the description. Someone specific authorized this approach, not the friendly intermediary whose name appears on communications, not the enthusiastic representative who speaks with such apparent candor about the opportunity. These are merely conduits, often unwitting ones, channeling decisions made in rooms you've never entered by individuals you've never met. Every operation has its architect, the one who identifies targets, allocates resources, and measures results. The one who benefits most directly if you fold. This individual recognizes your potential more clearly than perhaps even you do. They've quantified what your voice could mean if fully developed, what your influence could accomplish if properly directed, what your talent represents in the marketplace of ideas. They don't fear your failure. They fear your independent success. Their goal isn't to destroy what makes you valuable. The strategy is more sophisticated, to redirect your energy towards supporting their position, to absorb your authenticity into their brand, to neutralize any threat you represent by converting you into an asset. The documentation may feature an organization, a company, an institution, but understand that entities don't make decisions. People do. Specific individuals with specific agendas who have determined that controlling you serves their interests. The true measure of their concern is the quality of the offer. The more generous it appears, the more significant the threat you represent to them. The more resources they've devoted to securing your compliance, the more they stand to lose if you remain beyond their influence. This isn't business, it's containment. When initial enthusiasm fails to secure immediate commitment, the approach will shift, subtly at first. Then with increasing intensity, the representative's friendly demeanor will acquire an edge. Conversations will introduce elements of urgency previously absent. The window of opportunity is closing. Others are expressing serious interest. The decision-makers are growing impatient. This manufactured pressure serves a specific purpose: to short-circuit your deliberative process, to activate your fear of missing out, to trigger decision-making from a place of anxiety rather than clarity. If gentle pressure proves ineffective, they'll escalate to more direct tactics. Urgency. We need your answer by Friday. Guilt. After all the special arrangements we've made for you. Fear. This could be your last chance at this level. Isolation. We've discussed this exclusively with you, but that could change. Each statement carefully calibrated to exploit common psychological triggers. Each designed to create emotional turbulence that clouds rational assessment. The chaos this creates isn't accidental, it's strategic. People rarely make good decisions under pressure. They fall back on instinct, on emotional responses, on the path of least resistance. This isn't negotiation. It's an ambush. The wisdom worth remembering. People don't fall into traps because they're blind. They fall because they panic. When you feel yourself becoming emotionally reactive, anxious, afraid, desperate, flattered, recognize these as warning signs, the sensors at the perimeter of the trap being triggered. These emotions are not your authentic response to opportunity. They are manufactured reactions to carefully applied pressure. The document they eventually place before you will contain two agreements. The first, visible, discussed, negotiable, contains the terms they've allowed you to examine and potentially modify. The second, embedded in legal language, obscured by complexity, presented as standard, contains the actual terms that will govern your relationship. What appears to be a gift is actually a contract, written or unwritten, whether you physically sign something, verbally agree, or simply proceed on the basis of mutual understanding. The mechanism of control activates immediately. The hidden obligations include elements you would never consciously accept, perpetual restrictions that extend far beyond the stated time frame, sweeping claims on your future production regardless of its relationship to this specific project. Unilateral authority for them to modify terms without requiring your consent. Severe penalties for withdrawal that make exit practically impossible. Mandatory arbitration clauses ensuring any disputes will be resolved in forums they control. The most binding constraints won't appear as explicit prohibitions, but as reasonable expectations that gradually crystallize into unbreakable obligations. The illusion of choice evaporates the moment you engage. From that point forward, every interaction occurs within their framework. Every communication becomes evidence of your acceptance. Every collaborative effort further entangles you in a system designed to extract maximum value while returning minimum control. This isn't partnership, it's acquisition. The most dangerous aspects aren't what the agreement explicitly forbids, but what it implicitly normalizes. The gradual surrender of autonomy presented as professional necessity. Something unexpected happens when you don't immediately comply. Their script falters. They expected either enthusiastic acceptance or predictable negotiation over specific terms. Your ability to perceive the true nature of the arrangement wasn't factored into their approach. The first sign is a subtle shift in communication. Response. Times lengthen. The tone becomes slightly more formal. The warmth that characterized initial interactions cools noticeably. These aren't emotional reactions. They're tactical adjustments. They panic, not because they lost a potential deal, but because they lost control of the narrative. Behind their composed exterior, emergency meetings convene. Strategies reassess. Alternative approaches formulate. Your name rises on their priority list from opportunity to concern. The public response will likely be measured. They may laugh off your hesitation, express confusion at your concerns, suggest you've misinterpreted standard industry practice. They might even withdraw temporarily, creating the impression they've lost interest while actually recalibrating their approach. These performances aren't genuine, they're damage control. Your refusal wasn't merely declining an opportunity, it was directly challenging their system of acquisition, exposing methods that rely on remaining unrecognized to function effectively. In their world, the most dangerous person isn't an enemy, it's a witness. Your rejection transforms your status in their assessment, from potential asset to active liability. The shift may not be immediately apparent. Retaliation rarely announces itself. It operates through proxies, through seemingly unrelated channels, through unfortunate coincidences that maintain plausible deniability. The forms this counteroffensive takes will depend on your specific vulnerabilities. Professional isolation as colleagues subtly distance themselves following whispered conversations. Reputation damage through carefully planted rumors too specific to be random, too widespread to trace to a single source. Opportunity interference as doors that were opening inexplicably close. Introductions get cancelled, invitations withdraw. Resource restriction as funding sources reconsider. Partnerships dissolve. Platforms limit access. The goal isn't merely punishment for non-compliance. The strategy is more sophisticated. To make independence so costly, you reconsider their offer. To demonstrate control over your environment, even without your consent. To establish that defiance carries consequences beyond the immediate rejection. The deeper truth behind these tactics: they reveal desperation, not strength. Organizations secure in their power don't need to destroy those who decline to join them. Only fragile systems require such aggressive boundary maintenance. Their reaction measures precisely how significant your independence actually is. The intensity of their response directly correlates to the legitimacy of your threat to their model. Systems built on control contain inherent vulnerabilities. The methods deployed against you require secrecy, coordination, and unquestioning participation from multiple parties. Each of these elements represents a potential point of failure. The same trap they set becomes their downfall. The colleagues they attempted to turn against you start questioning the pattern. The rumors they circulated trace back to suspicious sources. The pressure they applied to third parties becomes evidence of interference. Their overreaction to your independence draws attention precisely where they don't want it, on their methods rather than their message. Every system of control eventually collapses under its own operational weight. The more energy devoted to maintaining compliance, the less available for creating actual value. The more resources allocated to suppressing alternatives, the fewer dedicated to improving their core offering. This collapse rarely happens all at once. It begins at the margins: small defections, minor exposures, isolated questions that gradually coalesce into significant challenges. Your individual resistance might appear futile against their institutional power, but it's never just about a single stand. It's about creating the first visible crack in a facade previously assumed impenetrable. Others are watching, others who received similar offers, others who accepted out of the same fears they tried to instill in you, others who now witness something they didn't believe possible. Someone walked away unbroken. This demonstration creates possibility where none existed before. The reversal doesn't require your active participation beyond the initial refusal. The system's excessive response to rejection contains the seeds of its own undoing. Your rejection wasn't merely declining an opportunity, it was a rite of passage. The immediate aftermath may bring isolation, uncertainty, even temporary hardship. These experiences aren't failures of your decision, but confirmation of its significance. You proved something essential. Your integrity cannot be purchased. This demonstration, primarily to yourself, alters your relationship with everything that follows. Opportunities begin appearing that never would have materialized had you accepted their offer. Connections with others who recognize and value authentic independence. Access to resources uncontrolled by traditional gatekeepers. Platforms where your voice reaches precisely those who most need to hear it. These aren't mystical rewards for moral purity. They're practical consequences of operating outside captured systems. By refusing to be controlled, you become accessible to networks that exist beyond conventional channels. The most significant transformation happens internally. The clarity that allowed you to recognize their true offer becomes your baseline for evaluating all proposals. The courage required to decline apparent opportunity becomes your standard for decision-making. What appeared as sacrifice reveals itself as investment. What seemed like rejection becomes selection. What looked like isolation transforms into curation. The temporary losses fade to insignificance compared to what you're positioned to receive. Not just alternative opportunities, but a fundamentally different relationship with power itself. You are no longer the supplicant grateful for consideration. You are the discerning party evaluating alignment with your actual purpose. Their retreat is tactical, not permanent. They will come again. Different representatives, different framing, different apparent terms, but identical underlying purpose: to neutralize the challenge your independence represents to their model. The next approach will be more sophisticated. They've studied your objections, analyzed your values, identified more subtle pressure points that might bypass your previous resistance. This persistence isn't personal vengeance, it's systemic necessity. Every exception to their framework threatens its comprehensiveness. Every visible alternative challenges their monopoly on opportunity. Your successful resistance represents a dangerous precedent they cannot allow to stand unchallenged. But something fundamental has changed since their first attempt. You are different. The signs you previously struggled to interpret now appear in sharp relief. The pressure that once created anxiety now triggers recognition. The isolation that seemed like punishment now registers as confirmation. You won't hesitate when they appear again. You will see them before they fully materialize. You have graduated from reactive defense to proactive discernment. You are no longer potential prey mistaking the hunter for a guide. You have become the observer they cannot deceive, the variable they cannot predict, the outcome they cannot control, and they know it. This knowledge doesn't guarantee they'll stop trying. Their system requires continuous expansion to sustain itself. Their methods will evolve, their approaches will adapt, but their fundamental limitation remains unchanged. They can only capture what you willingly surrender. They can only control what you agree to yield. They can only claim what you consent to giving. Your power was never something they could take. It was only ever something you could relinquish, and now you know